There are certain things in the London market that could change, that would help that sort of, or prevent that sort of behaviour, because it was unfair, wasn't it? And I felt sorry for your client to an extent, because they were put in a very difficult position because they had a specific buyer who was the right buyer all along. There's always lifetime value in giving clear, concise and honest advice, isn't it? That success isn't necessarily judged by the fee at the end of it, but actually when they start referring their friends and their friends start referring their friends, and it snowballs that way.
Welcome to the latest edition of our podcast, Navigating, with me, Bertie Russell. I'm very excited to welcome Simon Connell, partner of Property Vision, hoping that we're going to be able to keep straight faces for most of this. I've known Simon for nearly 20 years and looking forward to it.
Me too. I think.
You think?
Yeah, let's see.
When we were chatting about this before, you sent me the direction of Jeff Wilford's podcast that he did with you, which I just thought was so brilliant and so amusing that I almost cancelled this because what's the point in doing it again? But
it's quite difficult, isn't it? I'll try not to repeat myself, but let's see how it goes.
No, do. It was great. Well, I'd love to start off how you got into the industry and your Foxtons days. It sounded like the good times.
So I never thought I was going to get into property at all. I was very happily having a good summer holiday back in 2001, and my now wife said, "You should probably think about a career at some point." And I was like, "Oh, it's a bit soon. I've only just left university." And then she found an advertisement in the Evening Standard saying, "Oh, look, there's a job here in property where you get to meet people and you might get paid quite well if you're any good at it. I think you should go." So I went along in 2001 and then spent 4 years there and actually enjoyed, surprisingly, every moment of it. It was a really, really good training ground. I'd love to tell you as well also that I was meant to be in property, but it was never an ambition. My family obviously have a history in the property world, but it's something I stumbled into, if I'm being very honest.
Yeah. Foxtons sounded like a really fun place. What was it? How big was it then? What stage was it at that point?
I think there were about 7 or 8 offices when I joined, maybe 9. And I was plonked into the South Kensington office. It helped that I had been private educated and sounded like I did. It fitted their brief quite well for that area. But it was a very, very brutal environment, but one in which I learnt an absolutely huge amount and very quickly. I'd gone from sort of 6 hours a week at Newcastle reading history to a 66-hour week trying to flog anything I could flog that Foxtons presented me with. And it was a steep learning curve. I was very green, but it was...
I imagine you'd be good with people, loved people, got on with people really easily.
I mean, I think I was apprehensive to begin with because... And that's something I've learned in my career throughout, is once you get to know your geographical patch well, you can speak knowledgeably about X, Y, and Z, can't you? But it took a little bit of time for me to get to that place where I like I do now, where I can speak confidently about most areas in London. But it taught me an awful lot. And the guys and girls that we work with, actually, if you look at them now, where a lot of them that have succeeded have got to in the world of property, they're high up, aren't they? I mean, they've done pretty well.
It's pretty much shaped the industry since then.
I think it has, hasn't it?
A lot of the people that are running departments or offices or businesses now have had a time at Foxtons, particularly when you were that sort of stage.
There was a good cohort.
Why do you think that was? Why do you think all of those people are where they are today?
Well, I think they were ambitious generally. And were hungry to succeed. And Foxtons, if you got it right, gave you that ability to be paid well, quickly and early. I think they also got certain things right. They were attracting a certain type of character, weren't they, where instant gratification in terms of payment, but also targets based. So I remember I started off with a green Mini number 3 and then quickly progressed to a BMW and then quickly progressed to a convertible S4 and then quickly progressed to 6 points on my license and then regretted the S4 and
downgraded to the scooter.
Went back to the Mini again. But I suspect it attracted a certain type and those guys have gone on to continue and do very, very well.
And do you think the training, or do you think, John Hunt obviously, he completely revolutionised what was happening, I think.
Yeah.
Or from my perspective.
So I remember when we started and we were given a desk and we were given a telephone and a roller deck, and that was it. But the roller deck was empty, And really what we were told to do were ask 3 questions in terms of when somebody called in. And it was a race to the phone. Every time was a race to the phone. Who could get this applicant? And then if you missed a call, one of the secretaries would then type into the office system and say, there's a buyer up to X amount online, whatever. And then it was a race to see who could get there. But that was really your training to an extent to begin with, in that pick up the phone, listen to the brief, and then show them absolutely anything you could think of. So almost ignore the brief. But then there were put in place as the months progressed certain strategies that we were asked to follow. And I remember when it got bigger and bigger and Chiswick Park came into being, you would know that you were being cold called by somebody at headquarters because you could hear the recording going.
Oh, really?
So you had to make sure you asked the questions that you were taught to ask. But they were very useful, and it worked. The one thing I remember most about it is that you asked what was a maximum you were prepared to spend,
and then you added 50%
and then you had 20%. Yeah, because everybody apparently lied to you, and it was quite true.
And were you good at being a selling agent?
I don't think so. No, I'm not a natural salesman. I think I'm good with people, but
Yeah.
I don't think I'm a natural salesman.
But you're very good. But you're a very good buying agent. So what's for people listening? What's obviously if you've got good people skills, but you're not a salesperson, there is another alternative for people.
Yeah, and it was a side of the fence I particularly wanted to go to. I actually hadn't heard of the buying advisory side of the business at all until I'd worked at Foxtons. But you're seen as a much more friendly source of advice, really. You're not trying to sell anything. In fact, we spend most of our time at Property Vision telling people not to buy things for a number of reasons. Yeah. It's just a very much more gentle way of looking after somebody and helping. But no, I wasn't a natural salesman, but I was good with people, and I think that then led to sales happening. So you don't necessarily have to be so cutthroat the whole time, do you?
No. Well, most of ours is hopefully not too cutthroat the way we do things. But
I would agree entirely. I think your business and our business have very many similarities, despite sitting on opposite sides. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have a lot of people that work with us who are very good with people, but possibly, some would be great at some of the more cutthroat places.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are just very lovely people giving kind of an advisory service.
Yeah.
And wanting long-term relationships.
Yeah.
Which I think does work.
It's 100. There's always lifetime value in giving clear, concise, and honest advice, isn't there? And that's what at Property Vision we are absolutely fundamental on. Is we're never in the business of making clients spend more, pay the wrong price, do the wrong thing, because we know that success isn't necessarily judged by the fee at the end of it, but actually when they start referring their friends and their friends start referring their friends, and it snowballs that way. Like you guys, we don't do. You guys do a little bit more, but we don't do much advertising at all, and it's all through word of mouth, really.
I didn't know anything about buying agencies before I came into the industry. And when you moved to Property Vision, what's the sort of progression of buying agency as a industry since you started?
I think it's changed beyond recognition. When I started back in 2005 at Property Vision, I can think of a handful of people really only that would do what we do. But now, if you look at the email lists that sometimes get mistakenly sent out with 600 names on it, you can see how many people there are out there claiming that they are buying agents as well. So in terms of an industry, it has absolutely exploded in numbers. But the one thing I think that differentiates us from the vast majority, if not everybody, is that we don't sell a thing. And we don't have to sell a thing. We have a business with the scale that allows us just to simply focus on the advisory purchase side of it.
And you're never tempted to?
Tempted. So I would say that as one of the partners, we speak about this every year. Should we set up a selling arm? And we argue for about an hour every single time.
Really?
And then we come back down and say, no, we can't do it because it muddies the water. And we've always said, stick to the basic principles of do one thing and do one thing really, really well. Yeah. We're not seen as a threat either, because with all those people out there saying that they are now buyers of us, they also sell, don't they? And
there are very few people that... There are a handful of people that only do buying.
Only a very, very small amount.
But there are quite a lot that do both.
But I think that can sometimes hinder. And if you do both, there are agencies out there that would be reluctant to talk to you or share information. So we just feel it would be shooting ourselves in the foot apart from anything else to do that.
I mean, we've spoken about having a buying arm of our business several times, not every year. But yeah, it would be shooting ourselves in the foot as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, we wouldn't get to hang out as much.
we wouldn't get to hang out as much. Tell me the history of Property Vision.
So
it's
41 years old now.
41 years old.
And it was set up by Charlie Ingworth and Willie Gething. And it was called Property Vision because the original concept was that Charlie and Willie would go round country estates to begin with a large camcorder, hence the vision section of Property Vision, and record said estate and then send it to all of their mates over in Hong Kong because they were both in Hong Kong for a section. So their expat mates would then be sent a VHS in the post saying, this is this great house that you've asked us to look for and here's the video. And then, so originally it was just a country business, but then London came along and it is now the larger section of it, not in terms of bodies, but in terms of power. But yeah, Property Vision because of the camcorder, basically.
And so back then, there probably weren't computers.
No, definitely not. I don't think.
So what were they doing? They were sort of posting.
It was courier pigeon. Yeah.
Courier pigeon.
Just pop a pigeon over to Hong Kong.
Amazing.
I think it was literally in the post.
Really? And they were selling, and they were acquiring properties for people.
They were buying properties, and it was a gap in the industry that they thought might have legs, and then it grew and grew. And then they managed to sell out.
Both great guys, those guys.
Yeah, and they've said, and Charlie still does an awful lot for us.
Yeah.
He does a lot of our thought pieces, and he is brilliant at that.
Yeah.
And they're obviously both well connected. But yeah, and then Willie went on and did Lennox Investments, which of course you guys know well as well. But that was the original concept. Yeah.
Working with Willie's is an amazing experience because it keeps you seriously on your toes.
Yes.
And he is, I mean, so experienced and so detailed and ridiculously knowledgeable about a negotiation situation.
Yeah.
He's been great at shaping our skills and how to provide the best service for someone because he has very, very high expectations, which I think everyone should have. Yeah. And I suspect a lot of estate agents could do better on communication and service they provide. Yeah. And he's been a really good one at keeping us
Well, that's
honest.
an ethos that I think still runs in Property Vision as well, is that we care deeply about the service that we are giving. And we're never in a rush. That's the other thing, is property is a personal process, isn't it? Yeah. And it takes time. You might be lucky and you might be able to do a deal within 2 tours. But actually, the right thing to do is to build up that mental jigsaw for clients and let them feel comfortable that when they end up identifying something, that they're doing the right thing. And that's something that Willie and Charlie really, really hammered home as part of the training when you first start. And it's stuck with us.
How do you continue that with new people joining? Is it just flows from what you guys have learned?
Open plan office is very helpful, as you guys have found out. Yeah. Obviously moved out of Anderson Street, didn't you? And so it's you hear everything that goes on. And I suppose if you start, you don't necessarily get clients straight away, and you shadow, but then you learn and you listen, and it grows organically that way.
It comes across really clearly that.
Yeah.
And you're obviously very protective of your clients, but not overly protective. I think you obviously you seem to have a very good relationship with your clients. Yeah. And it's quite open and trusting. And I think sometimes we feel people are overly protective of their clients, but I don't know. There's great respect and I suppose trust.
Yeah, I think that's fundamental. It has to be a two-way relationship as well. We're obviously trying to look after them, but they have to respect us too. Yeah. And it's up to us to prove that we know what we're talking about, and so we earn their respect. But we're very, very lucky. Most of our clients are truly lovely people. And it's fun to hang out with them. They are interesting, they are successful. And so it's an absolute pleasure. Obviously, not everybody can be like that, but the vast majority of clients we feel very, very fortunate to work for.
And what would you say is the largest reason why people come to you? Is it saving time? Is it saving money? Is it expertise?
I think originally people come to us to try and either open doors that they can't open themselves, or they haven't got the time to do it, or they just simply don't know where to start. And people often mistakenly think that most of our clients are from abroad. They're not. The vast majority are domiciled here and just need a little guidance here or a little guidance there. But it's not an easy business, is it? As you well know, to find it takes time.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people can run out of patience apart from anything else. And I think our services also vary from market to market. So at the moment, we feel pretty confident because the market is in our favour for once.
Yeah.
And so we are used very much more as a traditional tool of negotiating, finding, and being the eyes and ears on the ground.
But when it's the reverse?
When it's the reverse, we're used very much as a tool to get to the front of the queue and to give our clients that unfair advantage that if we were in competition, that we can exploit our relationships with all the people that we've built years and years of relationships with for their benefit. And so it really varies depending on the market.
I've been wondering whether to bring this up because it might be a sore topic, but
I don't know what you're going to say.
we had a moment together when we were acting for the seller and you were acting for the buyer on a property post-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Big garden, very lateral, and we brought it on for a certain price and ended up going to best bids. And there were 3 people bidding on it.
Yeah.
And it just went crazy.
It was brutal, wasn't it?
And I suppose why I want to bring it up is that we're good. We've been friends for a long time, and but it's awkward those situations when we're obviously acting for our client, you're acting for yours. I think what's great working with all of your team is everyone is very level-headed and professional. But those situations are tough, and I think quite often buyers don't fully understand what's happening. But with your help, at least, and I know your client in that situation went through they went through a few difficult moments losing properties on.
It was really hard for those guys,
and they were the loveliest couple.
Yes, the nicest people in the world.
But actually, I think by the sounds of it, they found the right home in the end.
In the end, we found the right home, and they're delighted. But it was a painful process. Actually, and I'd be interested to know what you think about this. But there are certain things in the London market or in the UK market, specifically the English market, that could change, that would help or prevent that sort of behaviour, because it was unfair, wasn't it? And I felt sorry for your client to an extent, because they were put in a very difficult position because they had a specific buyer who was the right buyer all along, who should have just bought it before any of this had happened. But it then led to a situation where it was brutal for the other two parties.
Well, and we have the relationship between the other party, who wasn't your client or the buyer who bought it in the end. They were really not happy with us, and
nobody wins, do they? And that's not what we're about. And that's certainly not what Russell Simpson about.
I mean, we had one last week where we had a transaction where we brought it onto the market on a Wednesday, and by the Tuesday we'd had 50 viewings and 7 or 8 offers, and the similar thing happened. Just the price just kept going, and our legal responsibility is to inform our client of offers. Yeah. And even if we've agreed that it's agreed and it's off market, we still have to inform them of the stuff happening. Yeah. And when the money gets to, there are few people out there that will turn a blind eye to huge sums of money being.
I tell you what, it's lovely when that happens, isn't it?
It does happen.
And it does still happen, but not as frequently as it used to. And you don't have to be the highest bidder necessarily in a sealed bid situation. No. A little bit of organisation here and there and presenting it in the right way can go an awfully long way to securing.
Well, that's why we love working with you guys and buying it, like the best buying agents. I mean, for us, so much of the hard work is done. Yeah. And presenting fully detailed offer letter with, we just know they're going to have their AML done, and they'll have a brilliant lawyer, and it will be ready. And
we just try and present it in as succinct a way as possible. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it, and you can trust us. And that is incredibly powerful as a message. And I don't know whether you experience this, but my piece of paper says that if you are in a competitive situation, if you have representation, you are far more likely to have success than if you're not. A, because of the relationships that we have built up, but B, everything, as you say, will be just organised and ready to go. And it's much more easy for you to say to your client, for instance, it might not be the highest bid, but they're the best buyer.
Yeah, and I think a lot of buyers aren't aware of that. When you come into a best bid situation, or even not in a best bid situation, but if you've never met a buyer before and you don't have any clarity on, prior dealings or whether they've got a lawyer or tax advice. I mean, the amount of times deals fall apart because someone thought they had the right tax advice and actually hadn't. But if you've dealt with someone like yourself or your colleagues, we know from history that everything's going to be organised and detailed, and the process is, once you actually get it agreed, it's pretty smooth.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously know our little patch quite well property wise. So the idea of me, and I suppose I'm familiar with the processes and negotiating things. So for me to use a buying agent in my little patch, I mean, my dad actually used a buying agent when he bought in Clapham because he was unfamiliar with it.
Yeah.
And for me, I moved to the country recently, and I couldn't believe how lost I was.
It's quite daunting, isn't it?
It's really daunting. And I've, everyone, my wife and my family all looked at me thinking, well, you're the guy in property,
You'll know what
so
you're doing. Yeah.
you'll know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are so many potential hiccups that.
Well, I meant to have moved out of London about 15 years ago. I'm still stuck here.
You've been talking about selling your house, but
yeah. I think I must be the worst person out there to try to talk to since 2003.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it's been great. I mean, so I live just off Wandsworth Common, and it's absolutely fantastic around there. Schools are great, lots of lovely friends, and I think that's probably part of the reason why we haven't ended up moving is because we've become very, very happy there in terms of, it is a little village. Sounds ridiculous, but if you think of London as a series of villages that are growing together, you can understand why every little section has its own identity.
Your kids must have friends, and you all have friends.
Yeah, my eldest is now 15, and so she won't be far off saying, well, why are you moving out? So if we ever move down,
now would be a really bad time for her.
Yeah, it'd be awful. Can you imagine? Sorry, darling.
But it does take, I mean, we moved out a year ago, and it takes time to, my wife's constantly door knocking on, new people's houses. Have you got kids?
Hi.
Are they the same age? Yeah. Hi.
But you liked it though, right? I mean, you haven't looked back.
I love it. I really love it. I mean, it was, for us, it was a bit more space.
Yeah.
We've got 2 little boys and a girl, and they are very energetic. And actually, we've moved into a house next to my in-laws and 10 minutes from my mum. So it's great for the kids to build relationships with their grandparents, and I love it.
So if you speak to my wife about that, she feels that she has cheated our children somehow by not moving out, and because it's not the childhood that she had and she enjoyed. And I understand that, but actually they've been pretty lucky. They haven't had a bad time. And
it's difficult for your job. I mean, your job would be a bit more difficult commuting, and
you
wouldn't see as much as them.
Yeah, I think that would be the difficult part. I've become awfully used to getting home at 6:30, 7 o'clock and seeing them every day. And so if you commute, it's a little bit harder. That must have taken a bit of adjusting for you, I suppose.
Well, I'm now staying 2 nights a week in London, so
to escape.
To escape. 2 good nights sleep.
2 to 3 nights, maybe 4.
No, there are definitely benefits to it, but it is. My kids are 5, 4, and 1, and it's my eldest. Every time I get back on a Thursday night, I don't tell my wife this, but she's going to watch this, but secretly go and wake him up.
You can edit it out.
Edit this out. Yeah. I go and see if he's awake, and he's typically asleep. So I wake him up and give him a hug, and he's which is a bit risky, but
I would not be doing.
He's like, "Daddy, I've missed you."
Yeah.
And it's very sad.
Yeah.
It's very sad, and it's not like I saw him that much before. In the days, I'd see him from 6:45 till 7 in the evening, and for half an hour in the morning. But when they're that age, it is a bit.
But when you were growing up, did you see? Because I'm thinking back to my youth, and I didn't see my father a huge amount. Did you see Alan when you were growing up a huge amount?
Not really.
They were working, weren't they?
I mean, I lived in London till I was 10, and I have vivid memories of. I mean, both my parents were working together for the first while we were in London. Yeah. And they would come back for bath time most nights, and then they'd go back to the office. Mm. And so, I mean, we were in bed, but I remember often we'd be sitting waiting on the stairs for them to get back at sort of 10, 11 o'clock. Yeah. Or leaving them little notes. Yeah. And then we moved to the country, and my dad commuted every day for 10 years, left at 5:30 in the morning, got back at 8.
Brutal.
So, we didn't see him at those times. He was amazing at coming to sports matches.
Yeah, I had a mother who turned up to literally everything.
Really?
Yeah, I still have a mother, but yeah, she used to.
She still turns
up. Yeah, unannounced now. Comes to the office, but she was like Alan, who just turned up to everything. Yeah, 4th 11 cricket on a rainy day. There she was with a deck chair.
Well, I should say my mum did as well, but I mean, I'm one of 6 kids, so they definitely had trouble getting to all the different logistical problems. Yeah. So tell me about your property history. The thing that I didn't know, but I found out from Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
What, in terms of
Connells?
Connells. So that was my grandfather, so we moved over as a family at the turn of the last century. We were called O'Connell back in the day, but then persecuted, so we had to drop the O to sound less Irish.
Is O'Connell, was it originally is there a drink? Is there a brewery called O'Connell's?
Oh, that's knowledge.
That sounds right.
Yeah, let's go with it. It's probably whiskey.
Probably whiskey.
But no, so we came over, and then my grandfather set up Connells in the 50s, I think it was, late 50s, early 60s.
Where was that originally? Where did that start?
Bedfordshire.
Okay.
Yeah. And he grew that business into something that he then sold. And Connells is still around to this day. We have nothing to do with it, but
it's a massive business.
It's
now.
huge. I think it's something like the second or third largest estate agency.
I think it might be the biggest.
It might be the biggest in the country. Yeah. But I think we were talking about this. I think it's owned by Countrywide now. But one of my brothers sat next to an old chairman of Connells the other day at an event, and he said he remembered my grandfather and how a lot of the stuff that he instilled in the company was something that he then took forward for the next 30, 40 years. So that was lovely to hear. And then he wrote us a letter to explain how the early stages of Connells had been under Larry was his name, Larry Connell.
Larry O'Connell.
His real name, Lorraine, but Larry was better. And yeah, so he set that up. And then sold it and then became immensely successful in terms of varying different business, be it land banking, commercial property, residential property, you name it, he did it. He was in that fortunate era where opportunities presented themselves, and he was
there to pick them up.
Yeah, he was a formidably terrifying man, but lovely at the same time.
Do you have good memories of him?
I do. I have a memory of him. So he lived in Jersey for the last 20 or so years of his life, and we'd always fly over for Christmas. And I remember him being brilliant because he'd rent us a football pitch for a family match. And we have a big family that we would all go over, so it was proper level-aside stuff. And he would do that, and then we'd go and get showered and changed, and then we'd go back to his house for formal sort of drinks. And then after dinner, when he was pretty hosed, he would then put a Quality Street wrapper on his front teeth and play the piano like he didn't have any front teeth. And so that's a memory that I remember. And it was a bit in sort of contrast to the image that he portrayed. He was immaculately turned out in his suit, pocket watch the whole time. And then suddenly a few whiskies in and the Irish would come out.
And your dad, did your dad work with him?
No, well, I think that was my grandfather's ambition, was to get Dad to go and go into the business and take Connells forward. But then my father turned out to be a very successful lawyer and didn't want to. And so that's when Connells as a business was offloaded. And I don't think any of us regretted that, but it was a bit sad, I think, for Grandpa at the time that my dad wouldn't go and do it. Yeah.
Family?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Well, I've got 3 children, 15, about to be 13, and about to be 10. And the eldest is at boarding school, which is a delight. You and I have spoken about this in the past, haven't we? About eldest children.
You're like my sort of parental guidance, mentor.
Therapy.
Yeah, we do a lot of this. Yeah, I'm in the sort of, my kids are the next generation below, so I'm always complaining about sleepless nights and difficulties, and you're at the next stage.
It's quite interesting who you meet through work, though, isn't it? Yeah. So, and I haven't been shy about telling this in the past, but you're not really given any guidance when you become a parent, are you?
No.
You sort of, suddenly this child appears. You're like, oh right, okay, and you sort of learn as you go along. Yeah. And I have a wonderful old client who has set up a business for parent coaching, basically.
Really?
And so I then decided a few years ago with my wife and I that we could probably benefit from actually trying to understand what we were doing wrong, what we could do better, were there things that we should be trying which are different to our approach. And it was the most brilliant thing we've ever done. Really? And it's fascinating how you are supposed to talk to children. It goes absolutely against what you and I, when we were brought up, would have experienced. Yeah. Don't get cross, don't do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, but it was the most valuable 6-week course that I had done almost ever in terms of parenting. It was fantastic.
Were you on a beach with a margarita?
No, I was on Zoom in the boardroom in South Ken. But it was brilliant. But actually, the net result of it all is that we have a family now that feels so much more in tune and aligned, as opposed to pulling in different directions and working out why it was going that way and then beating yourselves up for making bad decisions. But it's not without its trials and tribulations, but it has been brilliant.
Yeah, parenting, financial advice, all these things we don't learn. Yeah. But you're expecting. I think I've got a bit older than this now, but there was definitely a period a few years ago where I thought, God, I think I'm a grown up.
I think I'm a grown-up
I
still.
think I'm a grown-up,
Yeah.
and I'm supposed people looking at me thinking like I should know what I'm doing, but
Yeah, I'm a teenager in a 45-year-old body.
well, don't put your body down.
No. But you're absolutely right. And before we know it, you and I will be going to a cricket match in 20 years' time, and we'll be grandparents. It'll be terrifying. Yeah,
It's an amazing leveler dealing with the people we deal with at some of them such high values. I remember a lovely couple I dealt with who were my age, buying something at 20 million. You know, that's not my financial situation, but
not yet.
But we both had the same age kids. We were both going through the same thing, and it's a huge leveler when you walk around and I can openly chat about this with other people.
Yeah,
and I think it's a fascinating part of our job to be able to, you're obviously giving advice and you're opening doors and you're doing all the stuff you're being paid to do. But then there's so much of our job that is relationship building. You sit in a car with someone for a long period of time, or you go through, it takes a year to help someone sell their property or buy a property, and you go through, pregnancies and births and birthdays, and it's a fascinating way of learning from really interesting people.
And getting gently older is something that helps as well, because you experience much more, and then you can translate that into your business life as well, because you have been there and done it, and you've met more interesting people.
It sort of makes it easier. I think when I remember, my dad chucked me into showing 10 million. I think my first viewing was £10.5 million, and I was 21. And I just didn't have anything to say to these people who
really nice.
were in their 50s, who had kids, and they had all this experience that I hadn't had, and I did feel a bit lost.
Yeah.
So it does make it easier as you.
It turns out getting a bit of grey hair and 20 years of experience under your belt can help.
It does help.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
Well, I thank you so much. Pleasure. I had several calls before the interviews from your colleagues.
Oh, they're so kind and caring, aren't they?
They were asking me to make sure you behaved yourself, and you've done very well.
Yeah, so far. Thank you, Bertie.
Thanks so much.